Okay, so the majority of you guys voted for a creepy video this week, but there was also a solid amount of people who wanted to see a happy fact video, so I decided to do something sort of in between. Think of this as kind of like a wow, that's interesting, but also what the frig kind of thing. You'll see what I mean in a second. When I thought of this topic, I had no idea what I was in for. So many things that we use in our everyday lives started out with purposes that were completely different from what we use them for now. For example, Listerine. Oh, did you mean floor cleaner? Ever run on a treadmill? Oh, you mean a torture device? Oh, you're watching this video on Wi-Fi. Huh, that's nice. Did you mean black hole detection technology? Yep, that's what all those things started as. Get ready for this one, it's a doozy. Here are 7 what the frig origins of everyday items. Number 7 are chainsaws were invented to help with childbirth. Yep. You heard that right. In 1780, 2 doctors invented the chainsaw to make the removal of pelvic bone easier and less time-consuming during childbirth. It wasn't gas-powered like it is today, but instead was powered by a hand crank and looked like a modern-day kitchen knife with little teeth on a chain that wound around an oval. Before cesarean sections or C-sections became common, all babies had to be passed through the birth canal to be born. But if the baby was too large or there was a complication, parts of bone actually had to be removed in order to create space for the baby, traditionally using a small knife, which was messy and painful for the woman. The chainsaw assisted with speeding up this now outdated practice, but eventually evolved to help with other bone-cutting operations and amputations. Then it evolved further until it eventually became a woodworking tool when people realized how quickly and easily it could cut through, well, anything. Number 6 is balloon animals were made of intestines. Hey kids, want me to make you a balloon animal? Well, let me just borrow Mr. Meow's there so I can get the material. Originally invented by the Aztecs, balloons were made out of cat intestines, stomachs, and bladders. They would let them dry, then sew them together using vegetable thread, and finally would twist these creations into balloon animals and then set them on fire as offerings to the gods. And yes, they would inflate them with their mouths. It wasn't until 1824 that Michael Faraday invented the rubber balloon, and over 100 years after that, in the 1930s, that the first rubber balloon animals started appearing. But it wasn't until the 1950s, when skinny balloons were first manufactured in Japan, that balloon animals as we know them today became popular. The long, thin balloons were originally packaged with directions to join several balloons into different animals, allowing your favorite neighborhood clown to form once simple animals into complex creatures. But let's be honest, I bet those clowns would still use those intestines if they could, huh? Number 5 is cornflakes were invented to stop masturbation. Cornflakes were invented in 1984 by Dr. John Harvey Kellogg. He was an American doctor, nutritionalist, inventor, and health activist. But he was also a Seventh-day Adventist, a branch of Christianity that advocated a strict vegetarian diet devoid of alcohol, caffeine, or meat. Kellogg was a fervent believer of abstinence and believed that sex and masturbation were unhealthy as well as abnormal and led to a lot of ills in society. So, in order to help society fight off any such desires, he worked on ways that people could curb sexual impulses, including by creating cornflakes. But they weren't the sugary cereal that we know them as today. Instead, they were deliberately created to be bland. In fact, graham crackers were invented by Sylvester Graham in 1827 to also be intentionally bland in order to help curb America's desires for indulgent foods and activities. Interestingly, the rise of cereal's popularity was not due to Dr. Kellogg himself, but instead his brother William, who created the Kellogg Company. It was also due to a former patient of Kellogg's, C.W. Post, who created the Post Cereal Company. Ironically, the addition of tons of unhealthy sugar to cereal is what skyrocketed its popularity, the exact opposite of what Dr. Kellogg wanted. But hey, at least people are getting sugar highs instead of choking the chicken. At least at the breakfast table. Number 4 is treadmills were a form of torture. If you thought cardio on the treadmill was torture, you're not far from the truth. In 1818, an English civil engineer named Sir William Cubitt devised a machine called the tread wheel to reform the most stubborn convicts. Prisoners would step on the 24 spokes of a large paddle wheel, climbing it for hours and hours. The kinetic energy generated by this was actually used to turn gears that powered water pumps and grain train mills. Interestingly, this is where the term treadmill originally came from. These prisoners would climb the equivalent of 7,200 feet or almost 2,200 meters a day. But the exertion, along with poor diets of the prisoners, would often lead to illness, injury, and even death. Prison reformers claimed that the treadmill would quiet the beastly spirit of the worst offenders. But likely due to the aforementioned reasons, treadmills did not last long in prisons. No, instead they were actually exchanged for more low-tech back-breaking tasks like chain gangs, breaking rocks, layering bricks, and field work. Because, you know, those were much more humane, I guess. Number 3 is Listerine was floor cleaner. You now know Listerine as the solution you swish around your mouth when you want to stop stank breath. But in the 19th century, that was not the case. Created by Dr. Joseph Lister in 1879, it was created as a do-all liquid that would be used to disinfect surgical tools, banish dandruff, clean floors, fight body odor, and even treat diseases from smallpox to gonorrhea. He was a Victorian-era doctor who discovered that if he cleaned his hands and surgical equipment with carbolic acid, aka disinfectant, his patients were far less likely to die a painful death from sepsis. Now, while this is common sense to us now, it definitely wasn't back then, and when Lister's idea took off and mortality rates plummeted, it was actually a chemist named Jordan Wheat Lambert that made his own antiseptic and named it Listerine after Dr. Lister. Not really sure how he got away with using the name like that, but hey, he did. Number 2 is super glue was used for wounds in the Vietnam War. Hey, you know that stuff that you use to put your shelving together? Yeah, it used to keep a lot more than wood together. Invented by accident in 1942 by Dr. Harry Coover during World War II, he was searching for materials to make clear plastic gun sights to be used by Allied soldiers during the war. It was during this process that he came across a very sticky cyanoacrylate, and although it worked well in holding plastic gun sights on, it not surprisingly stuck to everything it touched, and so he abandoned the project. But it wasn't until over a decade later in 1956 that he actually rediscovered cyanoacrylate while working on another project for a print and packing technology company called Eastman Kodak. But it was this time that he did not ignore it. After convincing the company of the product's potential, it was manufactured under multiple different names until it eventually became known as Super Bonder, where it captured 75% of the North American market. Later, as the Vietnam War raged on and soldiers were injured, the primary objective was to stop bleeding before soldiers got to the hospital. Out of desperation, medics actually started using superglue to adhere the tissue, which would stop bleeding within seconds, which actually ended up saving many lives. And number 1 is Wi-Fi started as a way to detect black holes. Although the internet was invented on January 1st, 1983, Wi-Fi wasn't invented and released to the public until 1997, but it originally was not intended for watching bald fact guys on YouTube. No, a physicist named John O'Sullivan had been fascinated with Stephen Hawking's theory that small black holes may evaporate and send out radio signals when they do. O'Sullivan wanted to prove it by seeing if we could detect these signals from Earth. He knew that if they existed, that these radio signals would be very weak and thus would be difficult to detect, so he worked to develop a complex mathematical tool to find them. For several years, he tried finding these signals on his own but failed. Eventually, he took a job in 1992 with a company that was trying to make wireless computer networks like the ones that we use today, but nobody could figure it out. That is until O'Sullivan tried using his black hole detection tool as a network, and voila, it worked. A mathematical tool once designed for detecting black holes ultimately became how you are able to watch this video on YouTube, probably in the bathroom. I see you on your phone. Just remember to wash your hands, you nasty. And maybe wipe your phone down while you're at it. You a filthy animal. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching. And if you'd like to say hi or wish me a happy new year or give me feedback on the video, whatever you want, baby. I'm probably live on Twitch right now, twitch.tv/MatthewSantoro. When I'm not making these YouTube videos, I'm live almost every day on there. So please go follow and check it out. And if you'd like to talk offline, I'm also available on Discord, discord.gg/MatthewSantoro. All of those links will be in the description, of course, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.